Raise your voices, raise your glass high. Welcome to the Drink O'Clock Podcast. Let's dive. Oh, grab an old fashioned and join the fray. Raise your spirits, let the music play. From the corner pub to the dance hall floor. Drink O'Clock Podcast, we're ready for more.
We're back with the Drink Clock Podcast. I am your lovely host, Rob Valincius. I don't have the hair that I used to, but here we are. it's the I'm paying for my choices in my early 20s, I think. And I have the benefit of having with me Rhonda Parker. Now, Rhonda, you're an entrepreneur, you're an academic researcher, and you're also an American writer. You had your debut novel, which is Crossroads. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you having me and showing up at 6:30 at night. That's amazing. You're a late night worker, so let's have some fun. And I hope anybody and everybody out there listening, make sure you have your headphones on and you're driving free, free-handed there. You got all your hands in there because we're gonna have some fun tonight.
I gotta tell you, I don't know where I'd be without, I'm not all right, so I went through, in my 20s, all I would listen to is music, right? That's all I listened to on the radio. I had to listen to music, and growing up, I was the same way, right? So we'll say anything pre-27, 28. Then I started to get into moving on to, not necessarily audiobooks at the time, but I got away from blaring my music, and I hit that 30-year-old mark, and then that's when I started to transition to listen to audiobooks a little bit more. And for me, I've always had a long drive to work outside of when I was younger, and some of my first jobs were around the corner. My drives have always been 40-ish minutes. It's, for some reason, that's just where it lands me every time. And so I moved into audiobooks, and now really, and podcasts, and I listen to a lot of friends' podcasts, and Joe Rogan and some of the bigger ones, Kill Tony, stuff like that. But recently, I strictly listen to audiobooks. For me, it's a lot about either the imagination piece. So I listen to a lot of fiction. From just novels that I really like. And then a lot of nonfiction, which I recently started to do more of, because for me, it's absorbing new information I didn't know before. I really like that. And it also gives me different things to talk about with either guests or, I'm a member of other podcasts and stuff. So sometimes we need different talking points. And, when you're listening to history, and you're listening to things that are a little off kilter, you end up absorbing some interesting facts and things that you wouldn't know otherwise. So I love interviewing authors, especially because you guys always have some interesting tidbits about where you got to, how the book started, the writing process. We're going to get into that today. So, Rhonda, talk to me about growing up. You obviously have an extensive background in teaching and training. I was going to list all your degrees, but I figured if you want to talk about them, you could at some point because you got a lot of them. Talk to me about up to the point where you got to or thought of getting into writing your book.
Well, for me, I think I was very similar to you. In the 20s, I had that free spirit, had to have music on, be social. Only I'd have my windows down and my arm out, floating with the air. And nobody would have really thought, you talked about my degrees, that's where the path that I would have taken. I was not considered smart. I was not considered academic. I wasn't considered even as a person that they would have thought would write a book, let alone a fiction novel and become a best-selling author. Now, they may have thought I was going to throw a good social party, or they may have thought that I might be an administrator somewhere, but that just wasn't what people's expectations of me were, because I focused so much on getting to know people. I love people. So that's why training and development is so important to me from the academic and business aspect of things. But for writing, it allowed me to explore a whole new world. I loved reading. I loved the whodunit thrillers. And then I started when I was writing, I was like, you know what? Wouldn't it be fun to completely entertain people, write a best-selling crime novel, and then switch it up and take my training and development and help write another book that would allow people to pick those characters apart that they identified with and their weaknesses. So I made every single character in Crossroads out of balance, out of life balance. So one's dedicated to work; they're a workaholic, and then I made one dedicated to law and order, which is the prosecutor. Then I had another one that character that was dedicated to their friends, and he's the co-defendant and has to decide whether he's going to turn state on his friend that he's known since he was, a child. And the journey to doing it was more about the exploration of people after I got started. So what started out is I wanted to tell a great story, and I really, everybody has the dream of becoming a best-selling author, but
It's true.
really it was about, once I got into it, who are these people? What are they like? If I hung out with them, what would we be talking about? And what would they be doing? What kind of good decisions would they be making? What kind of bad decisions were they going to make? And they all ended up being almost like a friend to me. Because I realized that the humanistic aspects of their characters. And so what I thought I was doing was proving to myself that I could do it with maybe a dream that maybe it'll become a best-selling novel. But then what I really ended up doing was finding self, creating a model that I think that I can duplicate in other fashions. So this one's about life balance, and it also explores three negative emotions, which is anger, fury, and envy, which all could cause a crime. And then I'm like, oh, well, my next one could be on people having the victim mentality, and how do we break that? And so it kind of created this model for not only entertainment, but also self help at the end too, where people can say, oh, wait a minute, I really think I need to dig into this myself because, hey, I am completely destroying my life by comparing myself and having envy, or my anger is out of control and I could act like, you know, Pee Wee, and so all of these things then can be brought to us, and we can say, "Hey, we had an entertaining time, and we played a game of Clue for while you read it, but now let's talk about us and how we can improve ourselves."
Yeah, you put a lot of yourself into the book, right? I mean, so these characters aren't just your friends to a certain degree. They're kind of a piece of you as well,
I
right?
think every single character has a piece of me and a piece of maybe what if something would happen. Like for instance, people are saying, "Well, you were never, you know, killed and ditched on a railroad track, so that character doesn't have anything to do with you." No, but we've all been victimized and put ourselves in a situation before where it could have been us. Getting
Yeah.
in the car with people that we didn't really know well enough, or that we shouldn't have trusted. Where it could have very easily been one of us, or we could have been the one that got in the car with somebody and had to, try to get ourselves out of legal trouble. Maybe they've been drinking and driving. Maybe we make decisions. We could be the workaholic, which, we all have a tendency, if you want to excel, to put all of our focuses into the work, especially in the Midwest. We're taught that your work is your identity. So you better work, and you better work hard, and that's who you are, and that's the way it goes. So, yeah, I would say all of them have a bit of me, But then they let me explore the what ifs and what could and what should and all those questions that maybe we didn't see and experience, but we could have had things gone different directions. That's why it's called Crossroads.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like that. This is the question I always ask authors because it's my favorite one to
Okay.
ask. What was your writing process like? You know, I've had people where they wrote their novels in a bar
Right.
because they liked the noise and people and things like that. And then I've had authors that just they had to be isolated totally by themselves. It's the only way they could write. You know, no noise, you know, things like that. What was your writing process like? And talk to me about why you decided the novel to be a suspense novel.
Well, I would say it was all of those scenarios depending on I'm kind of a mood and emotion person. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, the one thing that I tell anybody that wants to write a novel, because it is a very daunting process, get the story out. 1 page a day, and it's done in a year, 365 pages. But you may not get the story may only at first be 50 pages, but get the story done. Know who your characters are. For me, once I started developing the characters, I'm like, oh, let's go shopping. What do they wear? What's their house look like? I even go as far as doing what they call in the medical community a soap note, which in soap note is your whole medical history and that of your family. So when they ask all those questions of you at the doctor's office, they're documenting when you broke your ankle, when you broke your nose, when you had a cold, measles, and anything that may have affected you. And then I do a DSM-5, which is the mental health assessment on them. They may not all have a mental health disorder, but they may be on what they call on the scale of something. They may have 4 of the 5 characteristics of depression, and then I know how they're going to act, because then it tells you right there. It's not a guessing game of how they're going to act. It tells you if someone has anxiety and they're in a stressful situation, they feel like they're going to have a heart attack. If they have emphysema and they're in a stressful situation, they can't breathe. And so it makes it so that you don't have writer's block, because you can always write about something in the room, something that, was going on, a thought or a memory of something that happened to them when they were a child, because you've already got it documented and thought out. So for me, that's the most important. Get the story out and then go back and fill it in with all the backstories. And then eventually, if you do 1 page a day, you're done in a year. It's over with. Now, you can do it faster. But if you stay committed, that's the thing. You have to be committed.
Interesting.
And so some days you may
Yeah,
do 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages, because you get on a roll. But if even when things are hectic in your life and you can't sit down, most people don't get the luxury of going and sitting themselves in a cabin and knocking out a book, because they have to eat, they have families, they've got all these other things,
bills to pay.
bills to pay, because you're not going to be rich unless you become Grisham. And Grisham actually sold on the time to kill only 2,000 books the first time. The first press run,
Wow.
he only sold 2,000 books. So
Yeah, I think for you too, it's interesting that you say that, because I think that's a great way to handle it. Not just the 1 page a day, but getting the story, because you can always plug in more. But if you have that beginning, middle, and end, then you can really fill in pieces and I guess flesh it out to where you want it to
and
be.
you can start asking about what people really desire to see. When, like, for instance, when I had Crossroads, I mean, it was done. It already gone to a traditional publisher. They'd accepted it. They were ready to go, and then they pulled after 2 years. So you've got to be ready for the ups and downs. But then I was talking to Meinster, the people that helped me publish Crossroads after that, and they were like, well, what quotes are quotable? And it's not something I'd ever even thought about. But in today's marketing world, that is something you can go in and you can plug in quotes. If you want it to have biblical parts of it, then you can throw a biblical quote in there. If you want, philosophical thoughts, then you can throw. But what is it that you want the reader to come out with? The one thing I've learned from book signings over anything else, which I love book signings more than maybe even my dog, is that everybody comes in to the bookstore with one mission: to find their next greatest escape. What is it that's going to entertain them? It could be Legos. It could be a book. It could be a self-help, journal. It could be, but it's what is it that's going to entertain them and take them from the world they're in today and either improve them, help them expand their thoughts and their knowledge, or something. That's the mission, is that great escape. And for me, I want to know how I can make that escape better. First, I was told Crossroads will not be your best book ever written. And I was like, well, that's probably true because you learn a lot. I like Crossroads. I love Crossroads. It was my baby, but at the same time, I have more in me. And I did write 5 of them. And there's a series. Each one has a main character when I was writing it. My problem was I was too fearful to complete the job and go out there and find a publisher. And I'm sure there's lots of people that are out there doing that.
Yeah, I actually had someone on, maybe it was like 4 or 5 podcasts ago, and they were writing a story. It was a pretty touching story. A guy was playing college football and broke his back, and but he went on to go back to that college. But he was a paraplegic or quadriplegic. I'm sorry, in the 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s when things weren't friendly to quadriplegics, paraplegics, to people with disabilities. But he's got, all these degrees, and he was a litigator, and he's got a pretty compelling story. But they were trying to find a publisher for their book as well, because I know those things can be tough. It's, I guess, as an author, what is the most annoying thing behind the scenes that you have to deal with? Is it the publishing? Is it the conceptualization? Like, what is it?
For me,
For you
personally, it's finishing, letting it go, quit tinkering, quit, and then because I'm a self-proclaimed ADHD, which means I have 4 or 5 projects, and it's like I'll go from one to the other, and I should be finishing the one, and then finishing the next, so for me,
I do the same thing. I do the same thing.
You just get too many things going sometimes. So I would say that's the most annoying. It's myself. And then the second most annoying thing, probably social media is your friend. But I would say it's a lot of the spammers that when you, I can do your marketing, I can do this, I can do that. And I'm always open to a real person that can get real results, but it's very easy in the marketing of the book publishing industry to hear a bunch of bells and whistles and fall for the bells and the whistles and not realize that it's you that has to sell the book. Nobody can sell the book more than you can. Get yourself in some bookstores and start talking to some people, and you're going to sell some books. Now, don't get me wrong, I sell books on Amazon every day, but and that is my friend. I love Amazon in that way because it can sell books while I'm sleeping. But I have to be out there talking to people, and it doesn't matter whether you're an introvert or not. You still have to realize that the book is a product. And that as an artist, I hate that sometimes because you don't want to think of it as a product. But your toothpaste isn't going to get sold if you don't have some pearly whites smiling and saying that's the way their teeth got that way. So if you can't sell your book, why is someone going to buy it?
It's true. And you know what? In the world we live in, social media is a blessing and a
Yes.
curse, right?
Yes.
Because doesn't take much these days for there to be a shit show, shitstorm,
Hmm.
right? You see that a lot with especially if sensitive things like the trans and LGBTQ plus communities. You say one thing wrong or you go out of line. Especially if you put something in a book, they could tank your reviews or they can make your reviews positive. So it's almost like that catch
Right.
22 there. It can build you up, but it could also take you
And you
down
have to
pretty
be prepared
bad.
for that. You have to be prepared as an author to handle, you know, trolling. And sometimes people do
Oh
it for
yeah,
just fun, and that's okay. Don't take it personally. What I want to know is how I can improve my product. You know,
yeah,
send me an email if you see something. Send me, that's fine. I want to know how I can better serve the reader so that they actually get something out of what I've done. Because what better way of a reward to know that, hey, somebody could sit down for a weekend and read my book and maybe forget about the bills that are stacking up because they've been sick, or maybe the fact that they can sit there quietly while their children are asleep and that's their entertainment without waking them up. Whatever it is that brings them that pleasure, that makes them pick up that book, if I can make it each time a little bit better, and I can learn not only from myself, because I'm not the scholar of the world that knows everything. Someone can tell me, like, hey, if you had just done this, I would have gone hook, line, and sinker. See, and then I would be, oh, you know what? Next book I can do that. So I like the
yeah.
feedback that makes me better.
What's a book tour like? Like, is it something you obviously you schedule out these things? Is it done by yourself, or do you have a management company that sets these
There's
things up for you and you kind of just
there's two ways you can do it. You can hire a publicist. The thing with
Mhm.
publicists is they're expensive. So first book, I wouldn't even suggest it. Wait, what I would suggest is that you get in there and talk to every bookstore in your state. And they're going to give you the same answer, especially if you're self-published. If you're self-published, they're going to say, we can't buy your book. If you're hybrid published, they're going to say, well, maybe we can buy your book. If you're a traditional publisher, says, well, if our distribution center has it, I can order it. So you're going to get the same thing no matter, because you're the first time author.
yeah,
But if you get in there and you get to know the managers and the people that are in there, they want local authors to thrive, just like you want to thrive, and they will support you. They may first make you take a what they call a consignment deal, which is you bring your own books and then they get a split for it. But where else are you going to be able to sit somewhere for 5 hours, 4 hours, or whatever, and talk to readers and sell 25, 30 books? You're not, as a first time author, going to do that on Amazon, right? So you could do
yeah,
that, and then the second time, if you sit there and you sell all your books and you make sure that everything runs right and you make the experience good for the customer, they're going to bring you back and they'll probably order them for you. So it's all about your attitude, and it's going back to realizing that it's not about you as the author. That's a big step. You make the accomplishment of doing it, and your ego goes up this big. You finally accomplished it. You got it, in print. And, then all of a sudden the reality hits. And the reality is that the person that holds the key is the reader and the bookstores. So then you have to say, okay, I have to partner with these people to make sure that I give them the best read that I can, and the best experience every time they see or hear from me. And then, yeah, you're going to make some mistakes, but you're going to get more successes though. It may take you talking to the same bookstore 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I have some that I still can't get in. But you know what? One day they will. And that's what my attitude is. One day you'll be calling me instead of me calling you.
So I work for a brokerage in insurance, and when I started there, I was in sales, and it's a lot of cold calling. And it's funny, the owner of our company, he's worth millions. He's very successful, awesome guy. He would only take calls from people, and you got to remember he's like pretty much above getting like calls from just a regular Joe in sales from a small company. We're pretty large. And he would only return calls, and he would typically politely tell them no, but he would return calls or answer calls from people who have called him 15, 20 times. And he would either tell them no, or, you know what, send me some info and I'll take a look at it. And, I think that resiliency is important when you're trying to, bring to life something new. Like it's the same thing with podcasting. A lot of what you're saying is because you're a creative, right? You're trying to bring something, you're trying to entertain people. When there's a million other podcasts, there's a million other books that they could be reading. So it's finding a way to draw those people in. And a lot of it is back to just old school grassroots marketing, just talking to people. And it's tough for people to do that these days.
It's hard. And sometimes you'll be like, you put your own fear in yourself. Oh, I don't want to call them. Oh, and you get yourself all worked up. Just pick up the phone and call, or go into the store and realize they're people just like you. Just because they're holding your dream in their hands. Don't get scared now. You already did it, right? So you do that, and you're right. It's just marketing. It's just selling yourself, and you're selling what you've spent your time and effort doing. So feel proud about it and be willing. Have that elevator speech. A lot of people don't know what that is that are just artists. But an elevator speech is your pitch. What is your pitch? How are you going to get people to buy your book? In 30 seconds, summarize it. And,
and that's the thing with the elevator pitch, right? It's got to be short and sweet.
Right,
so 30 seconds or less.
Same thing for book signings. If they don't know you and they're like, okay, I'm going to stop and talk to the author that's at the table, how are you going to captivate them? Now, if they're from Indiana, I already have my pitch. Hey, it's an Indiana-based crime thriller. It's got sites that you'll recognize. All the sites are real, but it is a fiction crime. It is not true crime. And then I said the sites you might recognize is the Monument Circle, Holiday Park, the mayor's office, and the dead bodies dropped on 38th and Guyan on the railroad tracks. Boom. They either want more, or they're like, not my thing. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Don't be offended. I had the sweetest lady that said, was saying, oh, I only read happy things. And I thought, well, I'll write you a happy one. And that's what I thought, that she was the sweetest lady, and I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed the little puppies that she had in a baby stroller that she went through Barnes and Noble with. I enjoyed my whole experience talking to her about which books she liked and which ones, she didn't, and why. And I really, you look at it as an experience then. But you have to look at the business part of it. If you're at a convention and you go up to an author's booth and they can't tell you about the book, it must not be that thrilling.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sad. That would definitely be pretty sad. But there is a lot of people. I feel like you get two sides to the coin, right? It's like, people that are very creative and they create something good, but they have no idea how to promote themselves, what they're selling. And then you have, right? Then you have some people who are really good at sales that are terrible creatively. Right. But sometimes there's people that are really good at sales with a really crappy creative product can sometimes sell themselves into selling that to people.
So if you just can't do it, it's just not in your makeup. Because, I coach people. So some people, you're right, they just don't have it. then find a way. Do you have someone that will go with you on those occasions? That can be your assistant, that can sell, that can talk to them and say, "Oh, by the way, she or he is signing today if you buy one." So you can flip it in a way that you're still, but you got to be able to talk about the product. You know, the book, the
Yeah.
story. What is it that you're wanting people to learn? You wrote it for a reason. You know, and if you can't do it live, then create a little video. A lot of people do videos. See, and I'm the opposite. I'd rather talk one-on-one with a person and tell you all about the book and hear about what kinds of things you've been reading than put a camera to my face and tell me to read the you know, a 2-minute read of the book, and I turn into the little first grader that's reading the victory drill book in front of the class, you know. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses and know what works for us.
Cameras can be sometimes very intimidating because and maybe it sounds like you and I are kind of similar. I don't mind publicly speaking. I don't mind talking to people, especially if I know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you got to bullshit
Yeah.
though. I'm relatively good at that, but I prefer to know
You
what I'm
look
talking
like
about. I was good at sales to a certain degree. I was never good at asking for the check. I was very good, and it's funny to kind of go on a side thing here, but in my job I'm a trainer. It's what I do too. So I found that as I was selling, my owner found that I was much better, not just at getting people on the hook, but teaching them what they needed to
Right.
know. And that's the one thing I found that I'm really good at. And I have a lot of patience because, you know, I work in Medicare and I work with a lot of older people, and you need patience with some of these people because especially with technology, they have no idea what they're
No.
doing.
They didn't have
You know, but
They didn't have. I
yeah,
watched
nothing,
a
right?
documentary, and it was a great documentary. Anybody that loves music, it was on Luther Vandross the other day, and they were talking about how, you know, that when you were dating, you know, they'd let Luther do the talking for them and you know, put the put the phone up to the music, or you haven't put the record on the record player, or whatever it may be. And you got to look at the technology boost we've had. You know, most of it, I feel like I'm behind, and I'm working with technology every day.
Yeah, well, to go back, I think you and I operate similar in that I need, when I'm giving a presentation or talking to a group of people, I need feedback, visual audio feedback.
Mhm.
And that's how I know if I need to pivot, if I need to, you know, kind of pinpoint on one thing. But when you're doing something over a camera, especially if it's you're not with anybody, you're just recording, it's like it's a weird thing. I feel like you need a certain set type of personality that can really handle that. I've found that for me, like I don't mind it, especially now because I've done so much of it. I just prefer the being in front of people because I know where, like if someone's dozing off in the back, I know that I need to be more excitable, you
Right.
know, or if it looks, because you can see if someone's puzzled or may have a question. You can't tell any of that when you're doing it in front of a camera.
Right,
You know?
right. It's exactly right. Yeah, and I feel like, especially if there's nobody around, or like on a podcast, at least I'm talking to somebody. But if I just put the camera up there and I'm getting ready to do a little spiel, I'm like, all of a sudden I freeze out and can't remember anything. I'm like, I talk all day long. I never have a problem talking. All of a sudden it looks like some kind of robot that took over me.
Yeah, it's a unique thing, and hopefully, you know, look, I think people do need to get better. It's funny. I was you know, I'm a TikToker, so I like to flow through and watch millions of different videos when I got 20 minutes, or you know, mindless stuff, you know. And I saw a video a guy had so on TikTok it's like a duet. I forget what the hell they call it. A stitch. They stitched the video, and it was a girl complaining that no guys ever approach her at the
Mm.
bar. Like, it doesn't exist anymore. And she said, where are these guys? And then the guy like hit stitch and he goes, well, we don't want to be labeled as a creep because apparently, for a while it's like, it was okay. And then it wasn't okay because if you were, buying a girl a drink at the bar, like, when I was, me and my fiance have been together for 14 years now, but we hung out at bars and like that's my friends, that's what they would do to as an in to talk to girls, and then it got to a point, and I don't know if it was the Me Too thing or if it was right around there, but got to a point where, all right, if you come up to me at a bar or you buy me a drink, you're a creep. So then guys stopped doing it. So now people are like saying they were complaining about it. It's like, well, I don't want to be labeled a creep, so I'm not going to go out of my way to embarrass myself, especially when a lot of times people aren't sitting at the bar alone. They're with
Right.
friends, so it's like, oh, that guy over there, he's a creep, the point, and it's funny how technology has kind of changed the way we interact with
Yeah,
people.
it really has. It has changed us in a good way and in a bad way, obviously, too, depending on what it is. It's transformed our culture, is what.
It's true. It's true. Now, for your book, is there any personal experiences that you injected into that you think is like noteworthy to talk about? Like,
Well,
it doesn't have to be
like I
many,
said,
but
all of them. So, like, a lot of people say, well, where did you get Paris from, which is the main character? And I would say it's every mentor, because she's just too perfect. And when I was in business building myself, all the women that were above me and that mentored me, they were like the epitome of perfect. I wanted to absorb everything about them. So I would say that the business part is definitely part. I would say, like I said earlier, the although I never was found dead on a railroad track, I did have someone pull a knife on me once, so it allowed me to
oh wow,
explore what if. Like I said, it allowed me to do some things like what would have happened if that person had killed me. And
yeah, wow,
so I brought the police in. So I really explored. Well, when the police come, what happens? Well, the first one might be seasoned, the next one might be a rookie, and then what's they're experiencing a young, 15-year-old, dead, and go through those emotions with the police and with the families and how they might react. The um, the co-defendant, I never was a co-defendant for a crime, but I have made, like all of us, befriended people, stayed friend loyal too long, and very well could have been in a situation where maybe had to take a charge because I was in that kind of situation. um
definitely been there.
been on a jury before for a in court, so I knew what those. So yeah, every piece has a little bit about me, or something that I thought about. So when I was like working in a crime watch unit, I monitored the proceedings in court and documented when things were equal, or maybe the sentence was too long or was different than another judge was doing, and we would turn the reports in. So I had that background. And then what I didn't know, like the hardest scene for me to write was the kid that called in that he'd seen the body. What does that kind of person sound like? When they call,
Interesting.
and,
Yeah.
and how do you make them sound, to write so I literally um, became a subscriber to one of these online things where you could sit there and listen to 911 calls and listen to one right after another until I heard one that was so horrifying that it gave me what I wanted to what I needed to make it sound real. And it was, an elderly lady calling, and
Wow.
the horror, the stuttering, the not able to give directions and not answering questions. And so I was able to relate then to how someone would be if they had, if they were in that situation.
That's cool. I feel like not many first time writers would do something like that. So you obviously did a lot of research, and you didn't just wing it. You wanted it to be as real as
As real
possible,
as I could
which is
have
cool.
made it. I'm a suburban, young woman at that point, and I think, I even rode around with the police that would allow me to in a small community. Never saw a murder, but I did see how they interacted, you know, and,
And that's
and how
important.
they
That's important because I think there's a lot of people that don't
it's
know
like it's
how
like
how they
watching a
operate.
football team. Really, it is. All they have to offer is their own physical presence. They can't make the decision for the
Yeah.
other person. They can't help them mental health wise. They can't do anything but give them humor or give them things to do or to get some kind of bantering that you would often see on maybe a football team when they're going through two-a-days in the middle of the summer.
Interesting. Wow. All right, let's shift a little
Mhm.
bit to some of your other backgrounds. You did a lot of research on emotional
Mhm.
intelligence. Can you pretend, and I have a lot of young listeners, can you pretend like I am a little kid and I've never heard of emotional intelligence? Can you explain to us like, what that is from a top down
Oh,
view?
gladly. First of all, everybody tells you that your IQ is the only thing that matters, your grades. They're lying. IQ has an equivalent score, which is EQ, which is emotional quotient, which is emotional intelligence. Left brain versus right
Okay.
brain. You have your reasoning skills that your IQ does, which is your math, your sciences, etc. Then you have your personal skills, which is your EQ, which is your intrapersonal skill, which is like your self regard, your self awareness, your ability to control emotional outbursts. Then you have your interpersonal, which is your social aspect. Do you have empathy for others? Then you have your stress management. Are you always running off anytime something's stressful? Or can you face it? And then you have your general mood. It has been found, and this is a best kept secret by all the people like me that teach, but that I was never known to be the brightest one in the bulb, the brightest bulb in the bunch. But so I was fearful of the education world. I have a doctorate now. How did that happen?
Wow.
The reason is I read Daniel Goleman's book on emotional intelligence, and it says that it doesn't matter what your IQ is, it's your EQ that makes you successful. You can have, and think about the premise, and this is kind of a stereotype of the most intelligent people that don't have any regular skills because they're so highly intelligent they can't practice the human aspects of working with others and things like that. So EQ is the ability to work and navigate your own emotions and control the emotions in the room to get things done through those steps that I just told you, your interpersonal, your stress management, and your general mood. If you can increase, there's actually 21 characteristics, but they're in those four categories. If you can be more empathetic, if you can put yourself in other people's shoes, if you can be self-aware of your own biases and make sure that you don't make the the decisions based on those, that you're considering everything, because sometimes we get narrowly focused, then you can be as successful as anybody else.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've never had anyone break that down like that for me before. Um, And I guess would it be almost like you have people that are book smart and street smart? Is that kind
Exactly.
of that was the old school way of looking at it,
Right.
right?
It's exactly that. It's the
Uh,
ability to navigate the world. It's the
yeah, because there's a lot of smart people that are not good
right.
with uh, was it reading the room? you know, I've seen that happen a
And
lot.
that's exactly what emotional intelligence helps you do. You know your place. You know not to put your. It's like so many times we want to make cookie cutters of ourselves. When you make cookies at Christmas time, you have all you got a little cutter, and you do all your Christmas trees, your stars, your hearts, whatever they may be, and you decorate them all the same. And then when you do that, you're eliminating diverse views. And then when I say diverse, I'm not just talking, cultural. I'm talking about it could be even in a business platform. It could be accounting versus operations. You know, if you don't have those diverse views and you're not listening and controlling people's fears and emotions, then you're not going to get anything done. People are going to resist every change that comes in, every new product that comes in. They're gonna resist it because you haven't taken the time to get the buy-in.
Now, is emotional intelligence, let's look at it from a business perspective. Is emotional intelligence, it's obviously going to be different, right? Between, your regular worker and say like your CEO, your leader, what does that difference look like?
Well, actually, it's more on the basis of their openness to experience. So it's not a level thing. You can have someone that's at an entry level position that has very high emotional intelligence. And you really want to groom those people for leadership. You need to get your hands on them and start giving them the skills. They just may not have the skills yet to be in a manager or a senior management position. Emotional intelligence is the ability to get things done through not only self expression but others expressions and emotions. And when so you could have an entry level person with a high emotional intelligence if they've taken the time to develop their inter and general mood and their stress management. What you normally will find on the lower levels is people that might have only a few characteristics that are high and have the ability to be groomed to the other characteristics to be high. I'll give you an example of a domestic leader that was a CEO that I knew personally that took the emotional intelligence test with me. And I used to always tell him all the time, you need to develop more empathy for people because he had that buckle up buttercup mentality to everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody, is a fate to who and what decisions they've made, which in some cases is true, but in other cases it's not. But he took the emotional intelligence test and he had a very high emotional intelligent quotient, but he almost got a 0 in the empathy. And he said, "You were right." I said, "I told you I was right." The thing is each one of those characteristics can also be built upon. Your regard for self, you can build, ways of doing that. Your self awareness, you can do some journaling and start paying attention to how you feel about things. You can actually,
Yeah.
start practicing being more assertive. That's a characteristic. You can do, some self action.
I'm not good at that. I'm not good at
Then you shouldn't be a
that.
podcaster. 'Cause
Well, and for me, I'm very aware at this point what I'm good at and what I'm not. So at least I
yeah,
know, and there's plenty of shit I'm sure that I can
no,
work
you're
on, but I know for
Yeah.
sure assertiveness is not one of my strong
Well,
suits.
I would say it depends on how you're saying assertive. Are you able? See, assertive is not being bold. See, that's where people think that you got to run in there and say, "Yeah, it's my way or the highway." That's what that is showing no emotional intelligence. Because when you're having a transactional relationship like that, what you're doing is you're putting your ideas on others. Assertiveness is the ability to form opinions and express them when there's tension in the room.
I'm not actually bad at that. Okay, all
So
right.
assertiveness is getting things done through expression and listening to others also in the emotional intelligence aspect of things. Because when you're assertive, you want everybody's opinion. If you're emotionally intelligent individuals, because you don't want your opinion only to be the one that matters. You want everybody. So, for instance, you'll want to know what the accounting department wants, and you want to know what sales needs, and want to know what the data that tells us in the data. Some people want to shove that all away because that means that they have to do something. Assertiveness is finding the solution to the problem.
Interesting. I guess that would make sense because you have a lot of like I'd imagine like IQ and EQ play a huge role with NFL draft players because they do a lot of that stuff, and they have their own grading scale of how they come out, and I've seen people score incredibly low with their IQ because I guess they're just flying through. I've taken the test. It's like 50 questions and you have to do it in 10 minutes, I think. But some of it's like, it's pretty hard stuff to like, and no calculator or nothing. You have to do a lot of that stuff off the top of your head. And, there's been people that score pretty low, but I'm guessing they score pretty high with EQ.
Right.
And, I don't know if you follow football, but, the quarterback for the Texans, he had like one of the worst, I think it was an IQ. I think he got like some crazy low score, but he's a top 10 quarterback in the league, so there's, it'd be interesting to see.
It would be interesting to see his EQ because most likely he's able to handle stress, probably under tight situations. He's able to hear what other people say. He probably has empathy for others. Maybe not so much on that one, but and he has to be able to get the best out of the rest of the team. So he has to have interpersonal and intrapersonal skills.
Yeah, he one of their receivers snapped his leg. It was a gruesome injury on like very public TV, and he was like crying hysterically. So, I think it was his friend. But so you're also an entrepreneur, right? You founded Intelligent Solutions. So that's like if you want to tell us a little bit about what you do on that side.
So Intelligent Solutions is a consulting organization, and what I do is typically my normal client is someone that's in transition. I founded it when I was in transition. I worked in academia. I ran a college campus, and my adopted son was working, and he was shot and killed. And
oh wow,
coming back to an environment that was the same age group was very difficult for me. So I'm like, what value do I have, which is training and development, and how can I use that value but not put myself through the agony when I was in the grief cycle. This was in 2009. And I realized that we've talked about the difference in technology. Many people hadn't been keeping up with how to look for a job, how to do career changes. Jobs were changing, all of these different processes, that were changing, and they needed to be brought up to speed, whether it be through skill assessments and getting them ready for their next move. So I did that. Is where I started first, and then I also started doing consulting on the college level for dissertations and capstone projects, etc. And it just worked out. It married very well, where I could take my skill sets in academics and become a coach to help people be the best versions of themselves. And that's what I try to do. I call it their story of success. Everybody has a story of success. Some people don't realize that they even have one. But when you look at their resume,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe they're looking at this is just a job, but then you look at the longevity and maybe and what they've been doing, and you can create this story of success that they can build upon and then go on into the next season of their life.
yeah. Because you do have. I think social media plays a role in a lot of that too. It's like, oh, I don't have any successes. Like, look at this
Right.
person. Look at all they're doing. But you don't see the background of that, and a lot of it, that is their success, is just showing you that version of themselves. But off the camera, they're a totally different person.
Exactly. And,
You know.
when you think about somebody else's life, it's okay to compare to improve yourself. Like
Yeah.
I want to do this, so these are the steps that they got there. But it's biblical, and they say anger is cruel, fury is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? Envy makes the bones rot. Think about how sturdy of a statement that is. Envy makes the bones rot. That means if I'm comparing myself so much so that I deteriorate how I feel about self, I've
Yeah.
become my own cancer.
Your sense of self is really
Yes.
important. And I think I always try to tell people, you're going to go through different types of yourself. What you are now is probably not what you're going to be maybe tomorrow
Right.
or a year from now, right? We all go through it, and I'm a totally, you still have your foundational self, but I think you do change, and sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse, but that's all in the eye of the beholder
Right.
in a lot of those cases. Now you do all this stuff. You're an entrepreneur. You got your book. You do your book. You're traveling to different bookstores and things. How do you balance all this stuff with your personal life and your
Well,
family?
what you have to do is you have to decide one day what you're going to do with your phone. You have to have just downtime. You schedule it. Luckily, I work out of my home, so I can do that. But you have to make it a conscious effort to that you're going to do, you know, X or Y. You're going to have a date night. You're going to do, whatever it is, and you just stick to it. It's not that hard to stay balanced. You can open up your blinds and look outside and get some sunlight. You can go outside and see whether it's cold or warm and look at the wildlife that's running through. You can take a short walk down the street. It doesn't have to be 5 miles. It can be a couple of miles. You can call when you're driving, the person you haven't talked to in a while to stay caught up. You can send texts. You just
Yeah.
kind of fit it. You make it simple. It doesn't have to be that you're going to the Caribbean, although we all want to go there.
I do agree with you, and time is fickle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're kind of constantly going against
Right.
it. So I think if you're cognizant of that, and I was watching a kind of like a motivational video, but it was talking about, okay, so you don't live with your parents, you see them, you visit them twice every summer or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, right? Or you visit them on Thanksgiving and Christmas every year. Well, if you do the math, if the average life expectancy is, we'll say, women live longer than men. So we'll say 80 for women, and your mom is 65. You have 30
Right.
times left of seeing your mom before she's passed away. And it could be more, it could be less. But when you look at it from that perspective, you're like, oh shit,
Make
or,
make it in.
yeah. Someone else that I had on the podcast, they were talking to me about summers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Jim's Barbecue. He was up in the Midwest at Sturgis, and he was saying an old man was talking to him, and he said, "Well, if you're, if the life expectancy for a guy is, we'll say 70, and your summers don't matter much, we'll say from 20, you don't really remember much, say under 20 or whatever, and you're 40, well, you got 30 summers left. So you got to
Make
you
it.
got to make them worth
But
it. And I thought it was wild to look at it from that perspective. I never really thought about it
So
that
what
way.
I did, and I started doing this when I was younger. So this is my next book coming out. It's a journey to life balance. And what I started doing in my 20s is I would take some time off and I would buy all the self-help books and I would sit there and I would make, all the different dreams that I want and I would write them out and do goals, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals in all the areas. I call them the 13 dimensions: spirituality, your health, your emotions, all of them. I'd write them all out and I'd plan it all out. Just what you're saying. You don't have that many years left. No, none of us do. Even if you're 19, you don't have that many years left. So if you plan it, then you'd get it done. If you're sitting there watching TV and 25 and that's your 25th thing of enjoyment, then you're not getting life satisfaction. If it's music that brings you satisfaction, put the music on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild when you put a number on
Mm-hmm.
it. And I encourage people to do that. And when you see how many things are left, it'll kind of freak you out a little bit. we'll leave it at that. But look, it was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you for having
You brought a lot to the table. You made me definitely think about emotional intelligence. I thought I wasn't assertive, but I'm walking away going, maybe I am.
But it's it's not you're going to do it my way. You're not in to bust things down, punch something in the face because you want something done. It's not transactional. What it is it's the ability to pull out others' perspectives and bring your own perspective to come to a way of making decisions.
That's definitely. I'm gonna not think of assertiveness in the same direction, and I appreciate you for that. So, tell everybody where they could find your content, your book, anything you got coming up, so that we can make sure you get that.
Okay, so you can find me at my website, RhondaParkerTaylor.com. Everything on social media is the same too, RhondaParkerTaylor.com. I try to make things very simple because I'm kind of simple-minded myself. Like I said, I wasn't the brightest bulb in the bunch, so I have to make it easy for me too. I can remember it and everybody else can too. And shoot me an email. Tell us how you liked the podcast. Can't wait to hear from everybody. And make sure that you realize that you're doing some of those things we're talking about right now. You're using a resource, a podcast, to get ideas, thoughts. If you have an idea for a book, write it. Don't let people hold you back. 1 page a day and it's done in a year.
Love it. My podcast is Drink O'Clock Pod on all socials. Drink O'Clock Podcast anywhere. At this point, it's everywhere. And we'll have it up on YouTube too, probably at some point once I get around to it. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to hang out. And let's do this again soon. Maybe when you're another best-selling author.
There you go. We'll do it. Let's keep it rolling.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.
On a stormy night where legends unfold, there's a podcast that's breaking the mold. Raise your voices, raise your glass high. Welcome to the Drink O'Clock Podcast. Let's dive. Oh, grab an old fashioned and join the fray. Raise your spirits, let the music play. From the corner park to the dance hall floor. Drink O'Clock Podcast, we're ready for more. We're ready for more. With a mix of folklore and rebel cheer, we'll guide you through tales of whiskey and beer. From Irish shores to lands afar, grab your friends, it's time to raise the